Well, we've already been going some 2 minutes almost, but we're going to give the computer some time to figure itself out, find itself, you might say. And now I'll start this countdown, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Well, that's probably good enough, right? So it looks like the computer is stable for now. So if you're watching this in the future, welcome back to the live stream. I'm about to go on a trip, and so we are going to play a lot of trumpet today, but right now I'm setting up a one of these guard cases that is infamous for Jens Lindemann putting 5 trumpets in it, or 5 different instruments, I should say, not all of them trumpets, flugelhorn among them, I guess. But yeah, so I'm setting it up. I only need 1 trumpet, but I want a slightly larger case so that I can fit my music and my mutes and anything else that I might need in there and still bring it on the plane with me. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm modifying the case right now. I'll show you the case real quickly. It is this guard case, right? And I've got just the 1 B flat in there. I don't know if you can see that. I can't see it. But I think I'm going to put it in the close position so that the valves are not depressed while it's in the case. That should help it still function well after several hours in a plane and that kind of thing. And this case is sturdy enough that if I had to plane side check it, I could, but I would not want to. And it doesn't need to be. It'll fit in every overhead or under the seat. So anyway, that's what I'm sort of trying to configure a little bit here. I need to move this thing around just a little bit more, just to get it kind of snug on there, so that the trumpet doesn't really want to move around at all. Sort of bring it down like that. And yeah, I guess I could put it in the back or the front at this point, but I'm going to put it in the front pocket, and I'm going to put one of these bell things, right? Just put it in the bell, and then you can sort of sneak it in, keep your hand on the bottom. I know you're not seeing what I'm doing. I apologize for that. There's not a good way to do it, but then I just have to remember to grab it from the front end every time, and then it'll come right out. But anyway, we only need a B-flat trumpet for this gig, so that's great. And we're going to play some B-flat trumpet, but what I want to actually talk about today, while I put this away, excuse me, is that when you're on the road, a lot of times you want to use a practice mute. I've got my Yamaha silent brass here. I love this one. This is one of the most free-blowing mutes that I own, practice mutes, I should say. I have a lot of them. And but there's a problem with all practice mutes in that they are not free-blowing. And so they can tend to trick us into playing a different way entirely, especially with our aperture. And so today what we're going to focus on is keeping the aperture small, making sure that we can get a really good response. This is something I really didn't understand. Well, maybe I still don't totally understand it, but I really didn't understand this for many, many years. And I, in particular, my dad, who might be watching, you never know, when we were off stage, right, about to go on to perform, a lot of times he's doing this. I'm not even going to mute for this because it's so soft. A lot of times he's doing this. And he used to really, not annoy me, but I used to wonder just, what the hell are you doing, you know? Because I understood that you got to breathe, turn around the air, really go for it, right? Get deep into the trumpet, get that reflection back. All these things that I talk about on my warm-ups and live streams, that you have to do all that stuff, or else what's the point? What are you actually accomplishing, right? That this kind of like half playing, you know, it's just kind of like you're building bad habits. You're wasting a little bit of lip, and you know, you're not really accomplishing much. But then I got older, and then I also needed different things in my trumpet playing. And one of the things I've been working on a lot lately, and again, I told you that there is a new device that somebody came out with. It's not official yet, but I did write a little blurb for it, and so it should be on its way soon. I just got word back that they're going to use what I sent in, and so that's really fantastic. And or I guess I don't know if they're going to use it. They're okay with what I sent in order to use it, if that makes sense. So I can't guarantee it'll be on the box or anything, but I really like this device, and I can't wait to show it to you. But it's not ready for prime time yet because it's not mine to share. So I'm not going to do that. But that device has been teaching me a lot about my Aperture and how I hold it and how I probably have too open and too spread of an aperture, and that's a problem. So how do you fix that problem? Well, a lot of stuff that I normally don't do kind of addresses it. So let's walk our way into it. And why are we talking about it with the practice mute? Well, the practice mute, I'm not going to do this. Normally, the plan for today was for me to do my practice mute routine that I'm sort of inventing on the fly for this tour that I'm about to go on, because I probably will be warming up a lot in practice mutes, potentially for a while, and then just go to the concert and play the concert open. And so that can feel really bad. The last time I did warm up with a practice mute, I absolutely did everything wrong. So let's do everything right today. And so what does the practice mute do? Well, I'll at least demonstrate it for you. There's a ton of back pressure. Listen to the air. Right? There's a ton of pressure. It's got to find that tiny little hole there, and it also swirls around in there a lot. So you won't be able to hear this very well, but so now this is a very good practice mute. It responds very easily, and it's about as open as I've found. Other people have argued with me that some of the other ones that we both own play a little more open for them, and maybe that's the way they play more than the difference between the mutes. Maybe that mute, the way they play, feels more open, and for me, this mute, the way I play, feels more open. And that may not make sense at first, but, well, we'll get into it, right? But yeah, you also might have the whole pack, the hip pack for the silent brass that allows you to plug in headphones and hear yourself in different environments. To me, it's a lot to carry around, even though it's very small now. It used to be really big, but even though it's very small now, it's a lot to carry around. And since they've made the microphone internal to the bell, in other words, the old one, I don't think I have one. Let me go make sure. I do actually. Let's get the old one. This isn't the first generation, because I left the first generation one in a Food Lion, I think, or a Kroger after playing carols, Christmas carols for the Salvation Army. And I just left it there by total accident, and they probably threw it away because they thought it was like a bottle of something. But this is the old one, and they both use the same. Well, that's not true. I was going to say they both use the same microphone. This one uses what's called a coil microphone. It's a little coil of sort of a filament kind of stuff that goes through the bottle in the center, and when you play into it, it vibrates the coil, and then the coil, that's the pickup for the sound. And because most of it is external to the bell, you actually kind of get the full trumpet sound when you plug this in. Now, this is one of the most stuffy mutes that I have, because it's letting out the air just in this little like space between the plastic. That's where it lets out all of the air, which is just not that much. This one, on the other hand, has more open. You can see these openings all the way around. These windows are where the air goes in, so that's already much better than this sort of funny hole at the top with a triangle. And then it's also coming out this little black hole there, not the silver hole. That's where you'd plug it in. But this is much better. But because it's all internal to the bell, it always sounds like you didn't get your full sound, because, well, yeah, if it's measuring the sound from this little cardioid condenser on the end, then actually, I don't know that it's a cardioid pattern. I guess it's probably not any pattern. It doesn't matter what pattern it is because it's stuck in your bell. But it's measuring the sound from here, so you don't get the benefit of this part of the trumpet at all, which is, that cuts off a lot of your sound. So it always sounds muted. So I don't care if you're in they have like a stadium, like a baseball or a football stadium setting that you can click on. That's great, but I don't want to hear like half my sound in any kind of stadium. So I just don't use it. I don't use the thing. I have it somewhere up in there. It actually works okay for piccolo trumpet, weirdly. I have a piccolo version of it that is this old style, but it works a little bit better. And the piccolo trumpet is already small, so even though it's a lot of extra resistance, I actually kind of like that. But anyway, so why are we talking about it, like I said? Well, because this extra resistance, when I'm warming up in a hotel room, or maybe some other place like a bus terminal or a plane station, an airport, otherwise known as a plane station, and not to be confused with the PlayStation. It's very soft enough that even though people can hear you around you, they're not offended by the sound. And you really don't want to play very loudly into it. It's not, you don't want to just, barrel down the horn with your biggest air. As a matter of fact, the stuff that you want to work on is kind of akin to like a mezzo piano or even softer kind of playing, because any louder than that, and you start to open up your aperture and press, and that is where you're going to get in trouble, where the next day you can't play the trumpet at all, and you're wondering why, because you only played like 30 minutes. This is why. So we're not going to do it in the mutes because that would be the most terrible live stream that I've ever produced, but we are going to do some things about getting our aperture smaller. And then we're going to do it on the trumpet as if I was playing the mute, and you'll be able to hear, I think, the difference and the point. So, all right, let's do that thing. So how do we start? Well, the first things first, I don't think I have any with me, but yeah, no, nothing that's going to work exactly the way that this new device works. So I'm not going to do it, but imagine that you have a nail, okay, like a nail that you'd hang like a picture with, right? So very small, and then there's a little flat head behind it, and you're just going to put that nail against your teeth, wrap your lips around it, and they're going to look something like this, right? I'm not going to go, that's not how I want to hold the nail, right? I'm thinking about the nail coming out this way, right? So the point's that way, and I'm going to think about it against my teeth. So here I'm going to wrap my lips around the nail, right? They come out a little bit. So what I'm envisioning is not just a hole, like a flat hole, right, in my chops, but in fact like a little tube, like a small long area of where the aperture is, where it's vibrating, right? So that it has depth as well as width. And that means that it can be, first of all, a little bit wider, but still feel small. But I said I was trying to get it close together, right? So it also means that I can play very, very, very quiet and get a really good response. Now, it also, because we've lengthened it, it also means that there's a little bit more resistance blowing through it. And so we're going to have to mitigate that. And the way we're going to do that is by trying to shape the air so that it matches the tube, right? So in other words, my tongue and my jaw and my oral posture, right? If I'm going from down here, right? Down in my throat, we want that to be open. Everybody agrees on that? That's great. So there we go. I'm just blowing straight out. No position of whatsoever, right? Well, now I'm going to need to start to shape the air because it's got to get to this size, right? It's got to get to the hole in the trumpet, which is also roughly going to be the hole in my aperture, right? Maybe even a little smaller, maybe a little larger, but this is a good visualization. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to go. So all I'm doing is putting my tongue in the way. And if you have trouble with this, you can say the word the, right? And now just don't finish the word. Say the, and you should notice that you're putting your tongue between your molars on the left and right sides, right? And usually you're also putting your tongue behind your bottom front teeth. And so it's got this arch to it, right? Here's the teeth. It has this arch to it, and it's also up on the side. So it's got this kind of U shape as well. And I've been teaching some of my students recently to hiss like a cat as opposed to a snake. So not s, that's resistant at the front, but that has resistance in the middle, but it releases that resistance before it gets to the lips. Okay, so again, what the hell are we doing? We're going from open here, and we've got to get all the way to a small aperture by the time it gets here. So we only have this far to do it, And so that means my tongue is going to be up, and then it's going to come back down towards the front so that it can bring it to where the aperture needs to be, right? So I'm just practicing that. I'm going, and I'll even get close to the camera here and a little bit at an angle so you can see my aperture, and eventually it's just going to want to vibrate, and that's kind of what we want, right? So pretty low. So I'm just doing a little bit of free buzzing, but I'm not doing it from starting from a tight-lipped position. I'm doing it starting from the shape of the air, and then I'm just trying to get my lips to wrap around that nice airstream. And once they figure out how to do that in a three-dimensional way, not in a two-dimensional hole, but in a three-dimensional tube, now I start to get vibrations. Now you might have noticed it was like really crummy double buzz kind of vibrations at first, right? Yeah, because I suck at this. I'm not good at it. I'm trying to learn it, right? But I'm going to allow for that. And you'll notice when we put it on the cutout, which we're going to do next, it's really bad. It's like really significantly terrible. But I'm patient, and I know that it's going to work because eventually I can always open back up, right? I can always like take a little lip out of the mouthpiece or whatever and just let my lip spread a little bit, let my aperture spread. And if that's what needs to happen to get the airflow to happen, then I can do that on the fly. But what I can't do very easily on the fly is start with a spread aperture as my basis of my playing and then try to crunch it down. That just really doesn't work very well. I had a student a long time ago who played like that, and he sounded so good all the time until all of a sudden there was air balls all over the place. And sometimes he could play high F sharps and high Gs that were killer, and sometimes he couldn't play above the staff. And so it was very frustrating for him and for me because I didn't know what I was doing back then. But that's what it was. It was just a very spread aperture that had to be just so to work in those registers. And what we're doing instead right now is we're building something so that it's too small maybe, and then we can open up behind it and also relax it a little bit and find the airflow that we're looking for that can be useful on the trumpet with whatever we want to play. And then we might play some licks. I've got, it's a brass quintet tour, so I've got the brass quintets here in this folder. There's a lot of them, a ton of music to not learn. We've already learned it. In fact, I did a lot of it here on stream, but a lot of licks to re-look at because I have a rehearsal tomorrow morning. I have to leave in 12 hours, so not a lot of time. And a lot of work to do. But anyway, so let's get to it. So we've already done... And if you can't do this, that's okay. Not everybody can free buzz, but it is a good thing to be able to do, to try to do, right? So if you get a buzz that's an octave lower, sometimes that's just how it is. Some people can just free buzz really easily, and some people just can't seem to do it. And I would argue that even if their playing is really good, they should still try to learn to free buzz just to have a little more control over the things that they're doing. And if you do it from the air, you'll be more successful than if you try to do it from the lips. That's what a lot of times that's why we can't free buzz, is because we don't have any shape to the air, and so it's all just out of whack, right? And when we play the trumpet, we do have shape to the air. Otherwise, it doesn't feel very good either, right? But for some reason, it's easier to shape the air on the trumpet to make it kind of go towards the mouthpiece, towards the aperture. We just do that a little more naturally. And then when we try to buzz our lips, we just go, and we can't do it, right? So, I have to get my corners in, and that brings it out, and that's what makes it kind of three-dimensional and small, okay? So Now let's do that in the cutout. If you don't have a cutout, they're great. It's a great tool. You can see that it is just empty in the middle, right? It's just the rim. And if you want, you can just have a rim that you hold to your face, but having the cutout does help us work on the angular part of it, right? A little bit better. And you can, in fact, you can put it in the entire trumpet, right? If you have one like this. Sometimes these are called visualizers because you can visualize the buzz. You can see it through the hole. You can't on mine. So that's why I call it a cutout, because it's cut out. But anyway, they're also called, well, there's other names for them. But if you look up cutout or visualizer, you'll find something. And it's actually okay if you don't get your exact rim size, because it feels so different with a real cup there that you're not going to maybe notice as much. It's nice if you can, though. This is roughly my old rim size, which is a little bigger than what I play now. So I think I'll leave this mic on. I'll just turn it down a little bit. So you can hear it's, like I said, it's not going very well for me because I'm not very good at it yet. But I am not hurting myself, and I have a goal that I'm getting closer and closer to. I need to rest enough, especially with things that are new. And you might say, well, it doesn't sound like a very good idea, Gabriel. You're about to go on brass quintet tour. You're going to rehearse all day tomorrow. What could you possibly be thinking, changing your embouchure like this? Well, I'm thinking about how tired I'm going to be all the time if I play with a spread aperture. And like I said, I'm always able to adjust more open on the fly, but it's really hard to get things closed back when you're already spread. In fact, it's almost impossible, and it really doesn't feel good even if you accomplish it. It's really hard to be accurate then. So what I'm going for right now is something that's too closed that I can get to work, and then I can open up as a part of that, and hopefully have a little more flexibility, a little more endurance, a little bit easier range, and a lot more efficiency. So that I don't hurt myself just trying to play around the trumpet as much as normal. I don't notice myself like I don't get tired right away or anything. It's not so inefficient that I hurt myself like as I'm doing lip slurs. But if I do enough, if I'm going to play, I'm probably going to play 4 hours tomorrow of straight brass quintet rehearsal. That's an easy way to hurt yourself if you're too spread when you start. So I don't want to get there. And on the tour itself, if I'm playing in this mute all the time, then it's very easy to start off really spread, right? So that's what we're doing, and this is usually okay in a hotel room as long as you don't do it too loudly. And even right now, I'm probably a little bit loud. So let's try again, and we're really just going to put good, solid, soft, like I said, mezzo piano air into some kind of embouchure, and we're trying to find the right amount of M embouchure rolling in, and then also pucker rolling out, and also corners in, so that I get that tube that's very small and a little bit long, and that is really efficient. And then if it's a little too restrictive, then I can try to open that up, either by muscle or by tongue position, or just passively by taking a little bit of lip out and going back a little to where we came from, right? So here we go again. So you can hear that's right on the edge, but that's starting to really get somewhere. So what I want to do now is start to feel like this is a comfortable position. All right, I need to get experience at it, and I need to rest and then put it back there, and rest and then put it back there, and rest and then put it back there a couple of times until I feel really solid that like that's where my embouchure should be. Right, and if you're changing your embouchure in any way, this is one of the things that's the most important to do, but also sometimes takes the most stamina of, or I guess dedication, or what's the word I want exactly, that you have to be the most diligent about, because you can just kind of set it up and then like say, okay, it's there, now let me move on, I got to play Frostfire, right? And that's okay if you don't have much time, but if you have another 10 minutes, maybe try every 30 seconds to just put it right back there very gently, so that by the end of that 10 minutes, you really haven't played much, but you've put it in that position. And this is what I think, and if my dad is on, hi Dad, you can tell me, I think this is what he is doing when he's just kind of testing a note right before we go on stage. He's getting the pitch in his ears, of course, but I believe he has perfect pitch, so he doesn't really need to do that. But he's getting it right at the front of the aperture, just like right there, right? And that, oh, there we go. That is setting up your aperture so that it's not too spread for the very first note you're going to play. Because that would really be bad, right? If you spread your lip on the first note, I hope that's the highest note you're going to play today, because it's going to be rough, right? But if you instead try to get it really working very softly, you can always go from there, right? So here we go. We're going to just set it up every, oh, I don't know. There's something still, oh, it's probably the rim. Yeah. So every, I would say maybe 10 seconds for a while. I'll watch the stream to make sure. So here we go. Ready? Get the perfect embouchure posture, I call it. Really easy, right? I'm not putting a lot of air, being very small about everything, just trying to get a response. That took a little longer than I would have liked. I'm learning that my tongue position really has got to be right, and that I have to change the location of some of my muscle groups to get a quick response. It's a little airy, but it's very small, I think. Just kind of watching for 5s of the seconds. It's taking me a little bit longer than 10 seconds to get something that I really like, so that's not great, but maybe we need to do it every 20 seconds then. Okay, so let's call that enough of the cutout for now. And I could still do this for another, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes, I guess. But we want to play trumpet eventually because, well, the trumpet's a trumpet. But again, remember, if we're on the road, we've got the practice mute in. And I'm going to do this on stream right now, just like I said, I won't play the whole thing on practice mute. That would be the worst sonically for you. But I am going to play it right now so that I can connect what I just did, the free buzzing, to what I just did to the practice mute, and then I can emulate that on the open bell for you, and we can see how it does. So it wants to be a G on top of the staff. That's my aperture setup, and it's very restrictive, but as we play on the open bell, again, I'll turn this down a little bit, but we're mostly going to stay up. As I play on the open bell, I'm going to want to keep that fast, small response, and then I can sort of breathe life into the sound a little bit, right? Now, you might be familiar already from my past streams with the forward sound concept, which is you blow in there and you get a reflection and it comes back, and that's what starts the vibration. We can go for that, but right now I'm mostly concerned about how big this aperture is, and the reflection method tends to favor a slightly spread aperture because that way you can blow through it easier and you can be sure that the reflection coming back is what causes the vibration. So it skews a little bit towards that open aperture rather than closed, and we're trying to get ours smaller. We don't want it so small that we can't do that, and that's what we're going to do on the open bell. And it's a little bit hard to do that on the practice mute, but you can find it. You just have to be very familiar with it on the open trumpet. So before I leave, I'm going to do a lot of long tones that are at a medium soft dynamic while I watch TV or do laundry or whatever else I'm doing, so that I can really make sure that I have 100% familiarity and memory of that feeling, so that when I play the practice mute, I can emulate that feeling. And even if it's not working exactly the same, the habit strength that I have playing the trumpet is building rather than diminishing, right? That's what we're after. Okay, so I'll just turn this down a little bit and we'll keep going. Now on the open bell, and I'm just playing whatever notes come out, right? It'll probably be a little lower because I don't have the practice mute in, so maybe it's an E or a C that wants to come out with that aperture now. So we got a really gnarly double buzz there that I just really held on to. Again, I don't want to get that, but I am trying to make something that's smaller, which is going to feel unnatural to me. And so I need to get used to it so that it feels a little more natural. And I also need to learn very quickly how to fix problems like that. So if I just bail out every time I have a double buzz or something like that, then I'm not gonna be able to figure out what's going on there. If I just live in that moment for a second, then I'm going to say, okay, well, what if I try what I did? What if I try puckering? Nope, that didn't help. That made it worse. Well, okay, if I roll in, though, then I started to get a different double buzz. Maybe if I pucker the top lip, well, I can't do that quite enough, and it doesn't seem to be helping. And well, what if I alter the tongue position and just make it a little bit, stronger air feeling? No, it didn't seem to work either. And then I tried to put a little more and a little less air into it. That didn't work either, and then I had to give up. But I learned a lot of things, and maybe that was just a bad positioning of the lips passively against the mouthpiece, right? Once you press, they can't really move around too much. Even when you play wet, I talk about this all the time, that if you play wet, you can sneak a little more in or out, mostly out. But if you play dry, you're stuck no matter what. You push it on there and that's it. So you better really get the right position. And if you play dry, you're probably very used to this process. You probably get a double buzz, or you used to get a double buzz in your warm up a lot because there's a little too much in the mouthpiece. Or you get a lot of air balls because you consciously spread your aperture so that it doesn't get a double buzz. So you'll have to find the exact right balance. So you may already know how to do this if you play dry, but us wet players, we don't really get it. And well, we probably need a little more or less lip in the mouthpiece, so to speak. So I'm going to do that again. Same thing, I'm just finding out where it lies, and then I'm trying to move it around a little bit and learn more about it. And then after this, we've been doing this for 40 minutes, then I'm just going to play the trumpet, right? I'm going to forget all about it. Unless I feel it spreading, I'm just going to forget about it and just kind of go for it, okay? So you may also notice that it's not always my normal sound. It has a little more, it's a little more simple. It's not as bright, as wide. It has a little bit of kind of like simple brightness to it. It's not as dark, you might say, depending on how you talk about sound. But that's fine again too, because I'm not saying this is what I want to sound like. I'm saying I'm really concerned about this aperture thing, and then I'll make my sound better, right? So it's a little bit turning everything on its head, but you should turn everything, if you think about it more like a spider web, or not a spider web, I call it web of lies actually, but think about it as a prism, right? So you look through it different ways and you see different things. Well, you should constantly be turning the prism so that the side towards you, the thing that you're focused on right now, is the side that you most need work on, right? That doesn't mean that the rest of the prism doesn't exist. It means that right now I need to focus on this. And then I can turn the prism once I feel comfortable about that, and now I'm over here doing something else, and now I'm over here, and maybe this way, right? So I'm always constantly thinking, and maybe one thing is my forward sound, but in this case, my aperture is what I'm focused on. Maybe my air use, in other words, the use of my air through the line is another thing that I could think about. Certainly music is something that I definitely need to get to, right? I can't just play unmusically because I'm worried about my aperture, but one thing at a time, okay? So now that we've done one thing at a time for a little while, I'm going to try to move around on this small aperture and start to grow the sound very quickly to be what I want it to be. But I'm really going to consciously pay attention to how my aperture is reacting to that. If it's just spreading to get me the sound, I've defeated the whole 40 minutes that I just spent. So I don't want to do that. But I am gonna play full on now. And I also want to see if I can move my air well. And I might not need as much air because this aperture might be more efficient. In other words, I might be able to get more sound out of it for less cost of air. And so that would be great. But I have to be careful, because if I just pump air into it like I usually do on a bigger aperture, that's not going to work. That, by definition, I've made the aperture smaller, so that can't work the same. Now, maybe that's great for the high range. Maybe my high range will feel closer because I can pump air into it, and hey, it goes up higher because the aperture's smaller. But my just loud playing in the middle register, I might have to do something different. And maybe some of that is physical, but maybe I just don't have to blow quite as hard. I'm going to fully mute this mic now. So the sound might be different. I'm sorry if that changes your volume too much. So overall, it's working pretty well. I noticed by the end there that I was not very comfortable doing at the top of the staff. I was pressing a little bit more than I would like to. And I think if I trust the shape of the air more and actually do something with that, then it'll be a lot easier and I won't need that upper lip pressure that I'm finding right now. Usually when we add that upper lip pressure, it's because we're, let's say, maybe tired, or we just don't feel like we have the compression we need, and so we pinch that lip and drag it so that it vibrates a little faster. But it also could mean that we're trying to spread the aperture. In other words, if it's too closed, then I'm trying to spread that aperture so that I can get a little faster, a little more air, and then I can use that air to play in the high register. So I might not quite have the right setting yet, but oh no, I'm frozen for the first time in this video, I hope. All right, let's see how many times we have to do this. This is one. But anyway, so hopefully not too many. But what I was saying, maybe I don't have quite the right setting yet, but I just have to make sure that the shape of the air is taking care of that for me. Yep, 2. All right, this is the part of the video where we reset the camera like a dozen times, right? Sounds like an airplane taking off. It'll very slowly get there. I don't see anything that should be doing this to us. Just 40 minutes of streaming, that's all. Well, we'll keep going. I realize it's frozen, but I gotta just keep on keeping on when I'm playing, at least. Again, I thought we had this solved, but I guess it's, well, I guess it's more than we thought. Same thing though, getting there. Easy to tighten up here and then keep it tight back here, but I really need to open up behind it instead of trying to open up my aperture. That's where it feels good to open up, but then you can't come back from that, right? So that's what we got to be careful of. I think I'll do something a little simpler so that I don't ruin my chances. Yeah, we're starting to kind of get it. And I don't want to play a whole bunch of double high A flats. I don't need to do that in this gig. And I might, if I have time during the tour to play in a big open space where I can actually do a full routine, especially if it's one of the days off, I'm going to do a whole routine. I'm going to take as long as I can. I'll take 4 hours if they give it to me to just play slowly and carefully, and I'll do my entire routine. I'll do every step, right? Oh, good. It's broken again. I'll do every single step all the way through, and I'll get to my high range, and I'll do my high range as I get to it, and I won't skip one, but I'll take lots of rest, and that's important, especially when you're playing a lot in the practice mute. You've got to take those days where you can play open bell and just really run with them. All right. Yeah, there it goes again. I don't know what causes this. If anybody has any guesses, I think it's just memory. I think I need to work on this computer's internals a little bit better, or perhaps just get a streaming computer. That would probably be the best thing, because this is untenable. But right, so we're going to play a little bit of Frostfire before we go here, because that's what I really need to work on. And then I'm going to have to go because I need to be doing laundry during this time, and I can practice and do laundry at the same time, but I can't stream and do laundry at the same time because, well, you can hear the laundry instead of the playing and the talking. So that's why we're not going to do it that way. But let's run our program now, right? We've got my top lip hurts a little bit because I've played a lot today already, and I've already done some practicing, and I've already warmed up, and so doing an extra warm-up, sometimes an extra bit of warm-up, you'd think like, oh, double warm-up, that should just make you twice as good, right? Well, you get used to warming up with a certain amount of like sort of tensile resistance to your lip, and so you're kind of warming it up, right? You're sort of stretching it out and doing stuff that maybe is a little bit more intense than you ought to do, but it works well because you're encouraging a little bit of that early on swelling, and it gets you warmed up faster, so you feel really good, and you're not playing on beat up chops when you're just warming up. And then later in the day, you've already practiced, you've done some other stuff, so it's okay to do some fundamentals, but really be careful, make sure that they're very measured and light. And that's the other thing I was going to say, and sort of why I was getting there, is after our gigs, if we can just hang out in the halls, if we are even indoors, some of them are outdoors, after our gigs on this tour, if I'm allowed to just hang out for like 20 more minutes, and hopefully the hotels are within walking distance, so I don't have to inconvenience anybody to do it, then I'll just stay behind and warm down. And a lot of people are against a warm down, but I don't think that a warm down is a warm down. I think it is preparation for tomorrow's playing. So in other words, maybe you've done some damage that you'd like to undo, so you want to recenter things, and your warm down is really trying to get things recentered, get the air back in charge instead of the pressure. Man, it's really just bad this time, huh? Well, as we know from previous times, if we just kind of let it go. Nobody's talking in the chat, so I'm just going to erase it. Maybe that'll give us a little extra memory, and we'll see. Maybe that's the memory leak. Obviously, it didn't work yet, but if I had to guess, it's OBS, just being a memory hog, and the camera. Well, we know it's the camera app because that's the thing that freezes, and if I reset it, it works. So anyway, so yeah, if I can take 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes even after the gig, especially if I can rest for a half an hour and then come back, I'll play a few notes at the end of the day. And even though it seems like more notes is just going to wear you out harder, if you can use that time to sort of figure out how you want things to work tomorrow, then you're going to sleep kind of with that last memory of how it works. So you want to be very careful at the end of the day not to just do your routine like normal, but to really focus on how it works and what you're supposed to be accomplishing with it, right? Well, if this doesn't stop, I'm not going to practice Frostfire because I'm not going to reset this every time. I need to be doing repetitions of the most difficult things. So I think I'm just going to call it here, everybody. I'm sorry to say that, but obviously it's not working very well. So I hope you learned something about like aperture control and warming up on tour and playing with a practice mute, right? Get a practice mute if you don't have one. It's an essential tool, and yeah, there are lots out there, but I do recommend this particular one. I am a Yamaha clinician after all, so I should rep their products as much as I can. And anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you had a good time. And I won't be streaming now for about 2 weeks, only because it'll take me that long to kind of recover and get back and do everything after the short tour we're on. So if you are looking for, I might try to stream while I'm on the road, but it won't be on a good setup. Obviously, this isn't the greatest setup, but it won't be on good microphones. And so I can't promise much, but I will do my best to start streaming when I get back. Ah, it's terrible. Okay, goodbye, goodbye.